So recently, a movie called Renfield came out, and it's basically the same thing that Hopper from Stranger Things did with Santa Claus, except in this case, it's Nick Cage with the role of Dracula. And I just thought to myself, yeah, this is indeed going to be a fun time. I went to the movie theater, came back out, and said, yeah. No, that really was a fun time. I absolutely enjoyed Renfield. This will be a spoiler movie review, so for anyone who does not want to watch this because of, spoilers, I do have a spoiler-free review up right now for the movie Renfield, so be sure to go check that out. Maybe come back here after you've seen the movie and let me know what you thought of the film, because this movie has been getting a lot of average reviews, and I find it weird, but also at times I find it very normal, because this movie, much like lots of other reviewers are saying, it feels like a culmination of two different films. Like, one's a cop story, and then one's this interesting supernatural story with a deep emphasis on character relations. In this case, it's the character relation between Renfield and Dracula. One's a victim of abuse, one is an abuser, and that is the much more interesting story. So whenever we do get pulled away from that story over to the cop side of things, yeah, the movie does slow down quite a bit, but it doesn't necessarily take away from it. And I think what this movie does enjoyably well in regards to kind of stitching together two narratives is they do it in a really simplistic, fun, easygoing way, because Renfield, he's not tropishly in love with the lead female, with Awkwafina's character, Rebecca. He is more so like envious of her position. He wants to be like her, and even all the jerks at the precinct, they're like, hey, your boyfriend is following you around. She's like, shut up, Kyle, like a good old South Park reference, I guess. And so I love that about this movie, is that they didn't force the two main characters to be in this lovey-dovey situation. It's more so that they both equally have respect for each other, and that way they can learn from each other. And I kind of mentioned that in my spoiler-free review. I just wanted to touch base on that a little bit more, and how I thoroughly enjoyed those two plot threads, ultimately by the end of things connecting and resolving the movie as it did in a not so great way. Speaking of the way that this movie ended, I guess we can go ahead and talk about it, since it was by far my least favorite part of the movie. So throughout the film, a lot of chaos ensues. There's a lot of death, a lot of blood and gore. And first of all, the blood and gore in this movie is quite amazing to behold. I wasn't expecting it out of this movie at all, but whenever you see it just pop off, it absolutely pops off. So kudos to the filmmakers for deciding to take it that far with the blood and gore and all the other fluids that you see on screen. But going back to what I was talking about with the end of the movie, so there's a lot of chaos that ensues, lots of death, and you kind of have to take these deaths as, okay, this is kind of what happens when Renfield makes a character choice, and it adds up over time. And it's something that really emotionally compels me, especially with the story, and it kind of goes on into many other stories, much like that of Game of Thrones. If a character makes a decision and it leads to someone else dying, they have to live with that decision, and you can't really take it back. However, in this movie, they absolutely can and will take it back, because at the end of the movie, after they defeat Dracula, they have his blood. And for whatever reason, his blood is the Dragon Balls of this universe. It is the lifeblood that brings everything back to life. Now, throughout the movie, it is mentioned that his blood does heal people. It heals people. It never once goes to say that his blood brings people back to the living. It never once establishes this. So you see at the very end, like, everyone is back in this room together talking about their shared traumatic experiences and things that they can't see anymore. I thought that was a funny line. The lead guy in the AA meeting, or whatever kind of meeting that was, he was pretty hilarious. Just his line delivery. I really enjoyed his character. He was very much a side character that was not supposed to be really noticed all too well, but the way he performed. I kind of enjoyed his presence throughout the movie. So nonetheless, we see him again, and as well as everyone else who got ripped to pieces again. They're all just kind of... They all just kind of get put back together like little puppets, and they're back to life, and they're all sharing this now shared trauma of having seen what is after life, and now they're back to life, and it's like, okay, I don't know how to deal with this trauma. Please, somebody talk to me about it. And it felt weird and interesting and funny all at the same time. But it kind of pulls back on those threads of like, okay, we said that these were the consequences, but now those consequences have been revoked. Those consequences now don't define the character Renfield that much more. And the end of the story, it's not as compelling. It strips away the compelling nature of the final act of the movie. Otherwise, the rest of this movie, it is a thrill ride to behold. It is a fun movie. It's like a little mini Halloween roller coaster. If you've ever been to like Disney World or Universal and you go on one of the Halloween themed rides, it's kind of like that in a sense of how fun and flamboyant this movie can be. And this movie becomes very fun and very flamboyant very fast. There's an actor, I'm blanking on his name, but he plays Sonic the Hedgehog in the new live action movies. And he's essentially the main baddie, one of the main baddies, who has a significant amount of plot armor. The amount of interactions that this man survives and lives to tell the story about in his own weird way, it's actually really interesting to see. He's like the Reiner of Attack on Titan, except in this case he's just a crime syndicate boss dude, and he's very loud and obnoxious, almost like if you've ever seen the TV show Barry. He's very similar and reminiscent to characters from that show. But regardless, I also like this character, and I kind of mentioned that in my spoiler-free review as well, is like some of these characters, they do ride that fine line of being either super annoying or being super likable. They kind of float it somewhere in the middle with each and every character in this movie. It's just somewhere in the middle. They're not terrible, but they're not like overly likable either, but they are enjoyable as a presence on screen. So earlier on, I did mention that Dracula does perish by the end of this movie, which is unfortunate because I need to see Nicolas Cage as Dracula again at some point in my life, whether that be a prequel or maybe a sequel. I don't know. Maybe he survived. Apparently, movies like this, they can take back death pretty easily. Maybe he rejuvenates from the blood particles that are left behind. Some insane Wolverine comic book moment, something like that. I need a reason to see Nicolas Cage be this character again, except I need him to be like the primary focus of the film, if not have more of a significant role throughout the film as well. It was just a lot of fun. It added to that ride, that flamboyant energy. It was just out there. It just made the movie pop. His character is what sealed the deal with this movie. Otherwise, I don't think this movie would have worked in any other way. Now, there was one fight scene that absolutely threw me off in this movie, and that was the fight scene at Renfield's apartment. He's with Awkwafina, and it just feels overly cartoonish, and the way it was filmed, it was one of the most least interesting scenes throughout the entirety of the movie, just based on the writing, the character actions, the camera work, everything. It just really seems to have fallen apart right before we get to our big final act with Dracula and them taking on the crime syndicate. So I feel like they poured a lot of their resources into that scene, whereas this scene, it felt like it was just kind of left on the cutting room table, and everyone just kind of seemed to have forgotten about it. I swear some of these shots look like they're from GoPros that were shot in log and never got color graded, but I don't know. It's just the colors on those cameras looked very ugly comparatively to the rest of the film, where the colors absolutely pop. Some of the scene and set decorations, they are visually enticing to me. Really reminds me of those old Batman movies where the set designs have more character than some of the actual characters in this film. Did anyone else also find it weird that Dracula, he wasn't just one bat? That's kind of like is that a stereotype, or is that just like his lore? Like he can transform into a bat. In this movie, he transforms into, what would you call it? A herd of bats, a group of bats. a school of bats. I'm not sure. He transforms into multiple bats, and I don't know. That was just something that unique that stuck out to the movie, where I'm like, oh, they kind of changed the lore of Dracula, and for some reason I'm kind of interested in learning more about this. So please, more movies. I think honestly we can all kind of assume what this movie is trying to tell us. At the end of the day, it is a movie about someone trying to escape a toxic relationship, a relationship where they are actually the victim, and they face not only physical abuse but emotional abuse. And it's something relatable that a lot of us have probably gone through, me included. And that's kind of like the draw of the whole movie. And seeing that tie together with Renfield and Dracula, it really made the characters feel that much more relatable, despite this world being so cartoonishly fun and wacky. But yeah, I enjoyed that aspect of the movie very much, despite it being the core premise of the overall film. Many of the action scenes in this movie were, like I said, very gory, very interesting to watch. And it really made me think, like, are these characters made out of paper and glass? That's just how easily these people got torn apart. And it made for some really unique visuals on screen that I enjoyed. Usually I'm not a gore person. I don't care about that kind of thing. And if something happens that pushes the plot forward, it doesn't really matter if I have to see it in detail. But here it seems to have its own style, its own brand to the film. It really punches with that rated R rating. They're like, okay, it's rated R, guys. We can do whatever we want. Blood splatter, anything else splattering against the walls. It's all greenlit, so let's just get carried away with it. Something else I mentioned in my spoiler-free review is the smart script writing. I'd say it's pretty borderline bare minimum smart when it comes to movies. It does your fair use of unique foreshadowing that gets built up maybe 2 to 3 different times throughout the film, probably a little bit more. Something could have obviously went over my head. And clearly some things were getting built up in some interesting ways, but I wouldn't say it is high-end writing level to where it was just like, okay, this seems to be a lot better than most movies that I've seen in cinemas recently or within the past few years. So at least we're getting something right. Renfield, it's not going to win any Oscars or any kind of awards. If anything, I can see Nicolas Cage getting some kind of special fun award for his role as Dracula. But otherwise, this movie, it's a pretty standard movie. I'd have to give it maybe like a 7.5 if I had to give it a total score. Still trying to figure out how to do scores with my movie reviews. So bear with me as I try to attempt to figure all of this out. But yeah, guys, that's going to go ahead and do it for my spoiler review for Renfield. Guys, did you watch the movie? Let me know in the comments down below what you thought. Also, if you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like down below, comment down below. The engagement, it truly does help out with the channel, increases those watch hours, gets more attention, gets more eyes on the videos, so would very much appreciate that. Also, if you guys like movies, we talk movies every single week, hit subscribe if you're new here. Anyways, yeah, let me know what your thoughts are on Renfield. All right. My name's Austin, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.